Okay. All right. Oregon wins. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, please, and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show. Oh my gosh. I am recording this right after the game ended, and eerily reminiscent of several games from 2021. Bo Nix, let's start with Bo Nix. This is a defensive win for Oregon, but we need to start with Bo Nix. Here's a guy, I feel like Chris Collinsworth. Now here's a guy. Okay, got that out of the way. So here's a guy who goes to Auburn as a 5-star recruit, a legacy quarterback, big expectations, has moments, but it doesn't go the way it was supposed to. Here he is at Oregon, playing his 4th year of college football, having his best season of the year. Off of the team's most disappointing loss by far of the season, also just their second. He's injured. We're talking all week. A lot of my Friday show was, what do we need from Ty Thompson, or what could he do to win this game? I think it's pretty clear, for more reasons than one, Ty Thompson was not going to win that game. But a hobbled Bo Nix did. And I said I'd rather see a hobbled Bo Nix than Ty Thompson. I think that remains true. Bo Nix is a freaking warrior. That guy is gutty. That guy is gritty. If this is his only season in Eugene, I am so thankful we got him for that game. That was awesome. That was so awesome. That guy is out there. He came to Oregon in the offseason at some level, probably not entirely, hoping to improve his draft stock for the NFL. He could have sat out that game. He was clearly not healthy. I mean, he couldn't move. But that's not what he's about. And he wanted to show his teammates, the country, maybe the NFL, but it seemed like that was the furthest thing from his mind, deciding to play that game. He has come in, and in one offseason, he has the respect of the Oregon locker room, the coaching staff, the college football community, and by golly, us Oregon fans as well. And a lot of people were doubters. You can't doubt a single thing about Bo Nix after what he just did. He gave you everything. He gave you everything he had at every moment. He'd like to have that interception back 100%. But that guy is playing his first and potentially only season as an Oregon Duck. And you know one thing I know about Bo Nix that no one can ever levy against him, exemplified by that performance? That guy is a fighter. That guy is an absolute warrior out there. And if this is the only year we get to see him, I'd love for him to come back next year. I would, because he's really good. But if this is the only one, that's the best moment to date. Maybe he'll have a better one in these final 2 games or 3 games, however many it ends up being for Oregon. But that guy went out there, he was not fully healthy, and he gave you every ounce of effort. And he sealed the game on the ground. Kenny Dillingham finally got a little creative in the running game with the play calls. Saved it for when he needed it most, and it came through. And Bo Nix made the play. He was willing to put his body on the line for that yellow O on his jersey. Or whatever color it was tonight. I don't know. Green, yellow, you know what I'm trying to say. The one that's behind me right here, as I work on my weatherman skills here on YouTube, that one. He's new here. He was never recruited here. He never had any thoughts about Oregon, and yet here he is, giving you, to quote Abraham Lincoln, the last full measure of devotion. That guy wanted to win that football game no matter what it took, and it took a lot. That was awesome. These are the moments why I love sports, honestly. that. He is doing that for all of you, for his teammates, for his coaches, for the fans in that stadium, and all of us who watched it on TV. That's who he was doing it for. Wasn't doing it for himself, wasn't thinking of himself. He's thinking about the team and what he needed to do to help Oregon win. Gosh, that was awesome. That was really awesome. Okay, let's get to the defense. Now, it is a reasonable question to ask. Where was this defense a week ago? My game prediction was 31-23. A lot of people coming into this game looked at, what Utah's defense has done this year, which has been good in spurts, but a little inconsistent at times. They've been vulnerable against the run. Looked at what Oregon's defense has done, especially last week against Washington, allowing over 400 passing yards, and said, oh, this is going to be a shootout. Not how I felt about it, not how it played out. Not surprised by it. I'm really not. It was a little bit more low scoring, but I didn't know how unhealthy Bo Nix was going to be. Like, if he played, I thought he'd be able to run a little. He wasn't able to run at all, except for, of course, the final play when it really, really mattered. But that Oregon defense against that Utah offense that is so committed to the run, and Cam Rising has just been in a funk, and Oregon took advantage, and Oregon made adjustments. I mean, Utah wants to go to Dalton Kincaid. They're looking for number 86 on basically every play. But I wasn't that worried about the rest of Utah's weapons because outside of Devon Vele, it's just kind of And we've got Gonzo, and Gonzo is a lockdown guy. Clark Phillips, a really good player, by the way. Speaking of Clark Phillips, Cam McCormick probably deserves the game ball. Yeah, I mean, it's Bo Nix. But also, if you gave out a second one, it would be to Cam McCormick because you can't give that game ball to Bo Nix if he doesn't make a tackle. Clark Phillips is going the other way to the house, and I don't know if Oregon had another touchdown in him in that game. I really don't. Utah defense started to realize that Bo was a little bit of a wounded animal back there. They were taking advantage. Cam McCormick, seventh-year player, that play's not showing up on the box score, but for a 1 in the tackle column. And it saved Oregon 7 points. They won by 3. Big time play right there. But how about the defense? How about the defense? How happy did that have to make Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy, specifically Lanning, to see your guys respond after the calamity against Washington last week? You come out like that against a darn good football team in Utah. You don't allow any big runs. You don't allow any big plays. You get stops on third down. You get stops on fourth down. You force turnovers. What can you say about that Oregon defense? That has to be such a galvanizing moment for that unit because they won that game. Bo Nix is the hero, but the guys who built him up to put him on that pedestal in this game were the defense. He made a lot of plays early, but then the offense sputtered. Didn't have a touchdown in the second half. Had just 3 points in the second half. Can't win a game like that unless your unless your defense is really, really good. And I want to talk about them and give them their due praise because they were sensational in more ways than one. They were locking it down, just like you can lock down your house with SimpliSafe. If you thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Ducks listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you don't want to miss it. Here is why I love it. In an emergency, they've got 24/7 professional monitoring agents that use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can get the priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that I recommend. The only one. Get 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. This is their biggest discount of the year. You won't even find a bigger one at Christmas. This is their Christmas discount, essentially. simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. This is a much better matchup for the Oregon defense. That's the biggest thing to understand if you're like, why didn't they play like this against Washington last week? Different philosophies, different ways to play offense, and this is a much better matchup. Oregon's got guys that can stuff the run. They've got great linebackers who are iffy in coverage but did a much better job tonight. But when you're lining up consistently with 3 and 4 wide receivers, Oregon's personnel is not made to stop that. That's why Washington had so much success, especially when you can't pressure the quarterback, which they did a much better job of doing tonight. Utah likes to run a lot of 12 personnel. That's 1 back, 2 tight ends. That is great for Oregon's defensive personnel. And that's why they only allowed 10 points. That's why they only allowed 10 points in this game. I don't even want to talk about how Utah got their other 7 points in this game, because I will start breaking things in here. Okay. Well, no, I'm going to have to talk about it eventually. But anyway, it's a better matchup for Oregon because you've got 2 receivers typically on the field at any point in time. You're almost never running 4 wide. And Oregon doesn't have the depth of cover guys to be able to match up with a 4 wide set if you go 4 receivers. But if you go 2 receivers and 2 tight ends, or 3 receivers and a tight end, and they've almost always got Dalton Kincaid on the field, yeah, Oregon can match up with that a heck of a lot better. Because you put Gonzo and Devon Vele, he's out of the equation. You provide some safety help, and I liked what I saw schematically more from the Ducks defensively in this game. Not as much soft zone, a lot more man-to-man coverage, and a lot more instances where the safeties were not playing so deep, and it felt like they were just, in a prevent, essentially. It was a much more aggressive game plan from Tosh Lupoy and Dan Lanning. I think they improved dramatically in that sense from a week ago. But part of it is also the way Utah wants to play. They weren't running the ball that effectively. They didn't have any big runs. They were kind of having to work for it, but they kept coming back to the run time and time again because it's part of their offensive philosophy, and they needed to set up other areas of their offensive attack. So I think that worked to Oregon's benefit. I think Utah got a little stubborn with the run sometimes, and Cam Rising was off. Part of it was cold, but he's in Utah, so I don't think that was much of a factor, really. Oregon was just able to get pressure in this game. Whether it was blitzing or just rushing 4, they got pressure on that last interception by Bennett Williams, who we'll talk about here in a moment. Williams gets the credit because it goes down in the stat sheet and everyone says, oh, Bennett Williams interception. That play call defensively from Tosh Lupoy, or whether Dan Lanning came on the headset and called it, I don't know. However that play got in was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. You had a free rusher in Noah Sewell coming at Cam Rising. So they stunted and twisted up front and used a simulated pressure to get Noah Sewell a free shot at Cam Rising. So he has to get rid of the ball before he can even execute a full 3 or 5 step drop. I don't remember which one it was in that particular play. So he can't get any mustard on that hot dog over the middle. So it's just fluttering over there like Peyton Manning's balls at the end of his career. And then, to compound the smartness of that defensive play call, we were double teaming Dalton Kincaid. We brought a safety down in the box and said, this is where Kincaid likes to operate. So we're going to put a guy over him as he lines up in the slot. And then if he wants to come over the middle, because our guy who's covering him has inside leverage primarily, we're going to have help in the middle. It's a great defensive play call. And the defense for Oregon in this game was fantastic. And Bennett Williams, you can't help but feel good for that guy. You can't help but feel good for that guy. He was maddening at times in this game. He missed a couple of tackles. He was iffy. Iffy is putting it kindly. He was bad in pass coverage last week against Washington. We all saw that, right? 2 touchdowns, over 60 yards, almost entirely on Bennett Williams, right? Bad game. Bad game. These are kids. That stuff's going to happen. He's always been a good tackler. I had faith in him in that sense. I was talking on a couple of Utah shows coming into this game about how I felt, Williams was actually a solid guy to match up with him as long as it was, kind of inside the first down, because I think he can tackle well, and as long as you're not challenging with high-end speed, he's going to be able to be sufficient. And I think he did that for the most part, but then he was missing tackles. He missed a tackle on a 4th down on Kincaid when he was in good position and coverage. You just got to go up there and make a tackle, stop him short of the line to gain on 4th and 10. Ducks later got off the field on 4th down on what was an abysmal read from Cam Rising and great coverage from that man, Christian Gonzalez. But there was a 3rd down and 7 scramble where Bennett Williams dropped his head and just whiffed, or else the Ducks defense could have gotten off the field. But at the end of the day, He had like 13 tackles. He had 2 interceptions. And he had some really nice coverage moments too. That's a big-time bounce-back game. And that doesn't happen if you don't have belief in the locker room. If you don't have a unit that is tightly knit, that believes in each other and builds each other up instead of tearing each other down or turning on one another. I think that's a great sign for a first-year head coach in Dan Lanning to have that ability. Speaking of bounce-back performances, Dante Thornton, breakout game, first of all, seeing his potential. This is why, by the way. About a year ago at this time, a highly touted 4-star wide receiver prospect who was not getting the ball as much as he would have perhaps liked and was not maximizing his full potential, decided to enter the transfer portal. That was Micah Pittman. I think Dante Thornton at points this year, if he had done that, there were kind of these moments, these cryptic posts and subtle messages on social media where like, is that about to happen again? But he stuck it out. He's gotten an opportunity, and what a game that was. He is a big play receiver. And yep, he also made a mistake. That was a bad fumble. Bad fumble. But he came back. Dillingham trusted him. Nix trusted him. He came back, converted a first down on a screen pass, and then had that big catch down the field right before the Bo Nix interception. Those are awesome moments over the course of a football game. Good for Dante Thornton. And I am so happy to see him becoming more involved in the offense because I think he's a big-time playmaker, and I think we saw that tonight. Now let's get back to the defense. It's amazing what happens on third down. What have I been talking about with the defense with regards to third and fourth down? Why can't they get off the field? Why can't they do this? Why can't they do... Because you got to create pressure. And look, the secondary has areas where they can improve from a roster technique and schematic standpoint, sure. But if you can't create pressure, none of it matters. Because good quarterbacks, if they are given time, are going to pick you apart. And finally in this game, Oregon had consistent pressure on Cam Rising all night long. It had him rattled to the point where he missed an easy 4th and 2 throw. It had him rushing a throw to make an interception. And it did a lot of great things. And that's what you have to have. And the defensive line, they stepped up. How many times did you have a batted pass for Cam Rising? I don't remember that happening last year. This was 38-7 and 38-10. And Oregon came out, punched Utah in the mouth, and that defensive line, they got consistent pressure, and then when they didn't, they put their hands up, got their hand on the ball, created a turnover. That was Bennett Williams' first interception. Also, I saw the most hilariously accurate tweet on that first Bennett Williams interception, which was Justin Flo with the accidental 200 IQ football play. Now, maybe he meant to do it, but the ball is tipped, and once that happens, intended receivers, short of targeting or grabbing their face mask or horse collar, you can light them up. It is 100% legal. And Justin Flo cleared Kincaid out of the way. Did he see that the ball was tipped? I think so. But also if he didn't, and he was just in the mindset of, there is football player, I'm going to go hit him, and then he lights him up and just clears the path for Bennett Williams to swoop in for the interception, I could have seen that happening as well. Regardless, those sorts of plays, the stops, the turnovers, we just hadn't seen it from Oregon's defense this year. But they won them a game. They stepped up. Big time stuff from the Ducks. Still more thoughts. We got to talk about it. We can kind of laugh about it now, but not really. What am I talking about? Anybody who watched that game knows exactly what I was talking about. That moment is not this week's thrilling moment in college football, brought to you by Nissan. The thrilling designs behind the new lineup from Nissan are intended to empower drivers in vehicles as capable as the driver themselves. When I think of unbelievable abilities on the field for this week's thrilling moment, it has to be Bo Nix with a hobbled leg when we needed a yard after Noah Whittington slid to the turf. I saw what he was going for, but dude, just get the first down. It's not going to matter. You're only going to save a few seconds. Utah didn't have enough timeouts. We're come out on 3rd and 1. And we show a similar look to the play before. And then you move Whittington to the other side, and it's a toss option. And they haven't been giving Bo Nix the respect in the running game all night because he can't really run. And then he gives you everything that he had to pick up that yard, and then we're in victory formation. That is your Nissan thrilling moment of the week. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at NissanUSA.com. Okay. If you're listening on podcasts, I'm rubbing my eyes, pulling my hair out, whole manner of other Dilly, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Why? That's all I can say. If you're going to send me a question at any point in time about like, hey, what do you think Dillingham was thinking on that play call? Here's my answer. I have no bleeping idea. There was nothing logical about what took place in that moment. There is nothing that could ever be said to defend what happened on the first play of the third quarter. It's the most inexcusable football offensive play call I have ever seen since we threw it, we being the Seahawks, on the 1-yard line with Marshawn Lynch in the backfield and a timeout in our pocket. It's not quite at that level, but it's close. Every time, no matter the situation, Ty Thompson has gone into the game. The offense can't move the ball. They can't execute basic plays. It's not a coincidence at this point in time. So with that in mind, you put him in there to run a reverse with your own goal line not that far away. After your offense puts up 17 points in the first half with Bo Nix, hobbled or not, why did you need to do that? And here's the takeaway from it that you have to always remember. Dan Lanning is a first-time head coach, and Kenny Dillingham is a first-time play caller. I know we are now in week 12, going into week 13, and they should know better than to get cute in that situation. Utah had nothing in that game. They had nothing, and we gifted them something. We put it in a box, put on this big Santa wrapping paper infused bow tied, whatever. And we just put it under their Christmas tree and said, here, you can't score. Why don't we score for you? For no reason. And getting cute has hurt the Ducks time and time again this year. And every time it feels like Dillingham and Lanning have learned their lessons on that front, we see that they haven't quite yet. And if Oregon had lost this game, that would have been the first thing I talked about. It would have been number one. You let them back into the game when you had it in control, and then you lost. Thankfully, they won, so it can be the last thing I talk about on the show. But that stuff needs to stop. It's beyond infuriating. It's like my body shuts down when I see that stuff happen. The 14J swinging gate last week. Why? Heck, even the moments where they're 5 wide and then they sprint into the line of scrimmage and snap it really quick with a tight bunch trips just to hand it off. Like, why? You haven't needed to all year, and now you feel like you need to. And hopefully, these sorts of situations fix themselves at some point. Is that point going to be this season? Maybe not, because we keep seeing it. Where you just, in certain moments, Dillingham had an on and off night. Talk about that more as the week goes on. In certain situations, You just are left scratching your head. And the best explanation is these guys haven't done this before. And they're doing the lion's share of the work correct. They are doing most of this stuff really, really right. They're 9-2, going into the game formerly known as the Civil War, chance for a 10-win season and a spot back in the Pac-12 championship game. It's important to remember they're doing a lot of things right. But these are the little things. You don't see Utah doing that stuff. You see Utah just making seemingly smart play calls or, calling what they know, and sometimes they don't execute in those moments. But did you ever feel like Utah had a play call? You went, what was that? What are they doing? No, because Kyle Whittingham's been there for 18 years. He's not going to try that sort of stuff. But Dan Lanning is young. Kenny Dillingham is young. They're relatively inexperienced, and they're making these mistakes. Hopefully they can correct themselves. But also remember, they were good enough on Saturday night to overcome it and win the game. You can criticize them for it, but I don't want to hear a bunch of comments or questions about, are they not that good? Are they like, no, it's a flaw. Everybody's got a flaw. You can have a great marriage with somebody and still have that one thing that just like always is a little iffy. It's like if a conservative and a liberal get married. Everything might be really, really good. But then when that one topic comes up, you got to tiptoe around it, or it's just not exactly perfect. And maybe over time, you figure out how you can resolve those sorts of matters. And hopefully Oregon's able to do that. But I don't ever want to see that sort of play call again. I tweeted out like 20 Ys because that's how I was feeling. It was not enough. It was not enough. There was nothing about that play call that made sense. Don't ask me to try and make it make sense. Don't try and make it make sense. It didn't. But we survived. Ducks win, 9-2. Good spot to be. Pac-12 championship and a Rose Bowl still in our sights, with the Beavs now in a position to try and play spoiler. Plenty more discussion coming this week. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.